been a lot of talk about hydrogen valleys. I mean, it's really high in the political agenda. There is, in the REPowerEU plan of the Commission, there is this target of 10 million tons of hydrogen, domestic hydrogen in Europe, and hydrogen valleys are seen as fundamental to get there. So that was already set up in the European hydrogen strategy. As I mentioned, the REPowerEU plan also has a prominent role. And I want to spend maybe 1 minute before I introduce the panelists to say why we are here and what do we mean also by hydrogen valleys. Maybe some people in the audience have heard the name, not so much what it is. And I'm going to refer to the definition that we include in our strategic research and innovation agenda, which basically defines hydrogen valleys as a defined geographical area. It can be a region, it can be a city, it can be an industrial area, where several applications are combined together and integrated in a hydrogen ecosystem. It's about demonstrating how the different parts across the hydrogen value chain work together and how they can, of course, based on renewable energy, that's an important element that we want to embed on the hydrogen valleys, can work together, maximize the use of renewable energy, and then, of course, take advantage of it, generate renewable hydrogen, and to use it across different sectors. And we are here, and you will hear later on from my colleague, and you heard this morning, on what has been the journey. We have been working with regions for many years now. Around 2017, we work with a number of regions trying to show them what could be the benefits of hydrogen in your territories. We noticed that there was a lot of interest to develop projects. There were actually concrete project ideas. And since then, there have been a number of things happening. It was the European Partnership on Valleys that was set up. We launched a number of additional activities, the project development assistance as well, to help those regions that were maybe not so much able at that stage to put already hydrogen projects that they needed help. So we were, and we are continuing helping those regions. You will hear on that. And then the phenomenon went also global. So now we are supporting an international platform, the Mission Innovation Hydrogen Valley Platform, which basically is bringing together all these international activities. We are going to continue supporting valleys. I mean, we cannot really talk about the specificities of what is going to happen year per year until the annual work programs are published, but we can say that, and the SRIA reflects that as well. We will continue supporting valleys throughout the different calls in the current multi-financial framework. But we have supported valleys already. We will, later on today, have another panelist that is joining us online, Nigel Holmes, which actually was part of the pioneering team, taking part in what we call at the time a hydrogen territory, the Big Hit project. Then we follow up with additional valleys throughout different calls, and I'm very happy today because we will have presentations of 200. Hi, girl. Now I notice that you are here. Welcome. You here as well? You can follow us.
Yes, I can hear you perfectly. Thank you.
Perfect. Welcome as well. I will introduce you later in more detail. So, and today we have with us two hydrogen valleys that we supported under the call 19 and 20, one in the northern Netherlands, one in the island of Mallorca. And for that, I'm happy to introduce Carlos Navas from Enagás and Geerte de Jong from New Energy Coalition. Then we will have more international vision through the activities that NOW is doing in Germany through the Hyland region program. And I will introduce you later. Alexander, thank you for coming. And then we will have my colleague Pedro, which will present these horizontal activities that I've been mentioning, how we are supporting regions beyond supporting investments in our projects, and also will present this international view on the Hydrogen Valley platform. So thank you, Pedro, for being here. And that's a bit it to the mode of introduction. We will have an hour with presentations. There is around 15 minutes allocated for each of these contributions. Depending on how much the speakers respect the 10 minutes, we may have some questions, immediate questions. If not, let's don't worry, because we will have questions in the second part of the panel, which will last for about 45 minutes. And there I will go back to Nigel, because this year we want to see also in each of these parallel discussions how successful we have been to date on a specific area and what could we do in the future that we are not planning to do. So we want to get that independent opinion from external scientific audience, for external actors, and that will be one of the driving lines, if you want, of the panel debate later on, but also, of course, with specific questions that the audience will be able to make to the panelists. So I think we are ready to start with one of the projects that we are supporting in the island of Mallorca. And as I mentioned before, we have Carlos Navas. He has a degree on chemistry and mathematics. He's been working on the field of hydrogen and fuel cells for many years in the private, public sectors. In fact, he was working in the fuel cells and hydrogen undertaking until a few years. And then since 2020, he moved to Enagás, where now he's in Enagás Renovables, and he's the head of strategy and regulatory affairs there. But today he's talking as coordinator of the Green Hyland project. So thank you, Carlos, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Hope everybody can hear me okay with the microphone. I'm going to try to stick to the 10 minutes that Antonio imposed upon me, even though he asked me to provide more information than originally I thought of. So if you cannot understand me, it's because I'm speaking too fast and he's to blame, just so you know. But getting to the point of the Green Hyland project, I've been the coordinator for the last 2 months, roughly speaking. Before there was another colleague. And what I can honestly say is that the project is actually going quite well. I will give you an overview of the status of the project, primarily with the main components, but some basic info on the project. It started in January 2021. It's a 5-year project. It will end on December 25th. Comes from the column to 2020. We have, I'd say, about a 15 to 20%. I'd probably give it a little bit more now of implementation. In fact, it should be 2022 in there because a lot of the equipment is basically about to be, if it's not purchased, it's almost operational and so on and so forth, and you will see where we are with that. Has a total project budget of over 20 million euro and a financial contribution of just under 50 cents short of 10 million euro from the joint undertaking. So this is the concept. It's an ecosystem. It's a small island ecosystem, a valley that has 300 tons of production of hydrogen per year based on a 2.5 megawatt electrolyzer that has a variety of different uses, both in mobility, stationary applications, and also green injection. On the stationary side, we have a fuel cell-based CHP systems, 3 of them, one for a municipal building, probably a sports complex, looks like at this point. Also the ferry terminal at the Port of Palma, that will use it for own purposes. This is not cold ironing. And that's a 100 kilowatt system, and then a 50 kilowatt system at a hotel in Palma, at an Iberostar hotel. So that's on the stationary side. We also have grid injection from the hydrogen production plant. We will actually transport hydrogen to a dedicated hydrogen pipeline, and then from there it will actually go to the distribution gas grid that's already in place in the island, and we will be able to respect the under 2% volume grid injection that you will see. And on mobility applications, we have a fleet of buses. Right now it's 5 buses under the project, although we do expect that this fleet will increase up to 8. And additionally, a fleet of vehicles, private vehicles, 10 in all. 3 of them will be vans, 7 of them will be private vehicles, and of course a hydrogen refueling station of dual purpose, as you can see. This is a little bit how the geographic location of all the species that I just described fall into place. So the production plant and the municipal building are, let's say, inland, about 30 kilometers northeast of Palma de Mallorca, for those of you who know the island. And then the bulk of the other applications are around the city of Palma, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Just to go quickly on some of the deployments that have taken place, we are using new PV plants, 2 of them, one very close to the production plant, the other one a little bit farther away. Overall, they're about 14 to 15 megawatts of peak power. Those are already in operation today. They started operation in March. We did an inauguration ceremony for the hydrogen production plant. It actually started production probably towards the end of this year or beginning of next year. That inauguration ceremony was very well attended and very well received. We had the Minister of Transition, Ecological Transition in Spain, the regional governor of Baleares, Bart Biboy, the executive director, also was able to attend, and CEOs of our respective companies were able to attend. You see also a 3D drawing of the plant. We hope to be able to open it up for visits, let's say organized visits, although we have way too many requests, but we'll try to accommodate those as best as we can over the next year or so. On the fuel cell buses, these buses have already been procured. They should start arriving in February of next year, that's 23. We have those 5 buses that will be operational hopefully by the end of the first quarter 23. These are 5 Urbino buses from Solaris. You see some of the specs that I won't go into. I believe these slides will be available to everybody who needs it. And of course, if you have any additional questions, you can contact me on those. On other bits and pieces of the project, on the hydrogen refueling station that has been procured, we expect it will be operational sometime in the second half of next year. It is dual use, 350 and 700 bar, both for the buses that will be used in the city of Palma and also the private vehicles. And we are planning on an interim solution to make sure that we bridge the gap between the time that the buses arrive in February or so until the station is operational towards the end of next year. On the pipeline, we have a good number of the permits obtained. There have been some last-minute glitches because you have to do a public consultation and make sure that nobody is pissed off that the pipeline is actually going next to your land. Somebody raised their hand and said, could you please move it a little bit further? So that delays. All in all, that's going actually according to plan, and we should have that operational by the middle, most likely, of next year. We already have the design for the injection point finalized, and I think that's going according to plan. The 2 trailers are also going, I'd say, more than according to plan. One of them is already, let's say, built. Again, it is missing just a mass flow meter, and the other one, I think, is in construction with the same design, and it should be absolutely no problem to have it in operation with plenty of time. Some key figures, I won't bore you with all of them, just to let you know that we are trying to have a project that has a lot of impact on the socioeconomic and environmental aspects. Environmentally, we hope to avoid up to 21,000 tons per year, and to really work very hard on the scalability and replicability of this model in the island and beyond. We're clearly in the island, this is going to be the beginning. We're going to build a regional roadmap, and we hope that this can actually expand further. Of course, the estimated investment here is 50 million euros. You saw 20 million euros before, but those are the eligible costs of the project, which take into account depreciation and those kinds of things. The overall investment is closer to 50 million euros, as you can imagine. I was asked by Antonio to put something along the lines of some of the exploitation plan, so I tried to give it a couple of thoughts. We have created a new company to commercialize the hydrogen. I don't know if this is a first, but it's not something I hear often in European projects. That's already happened. We already have somebody actually working there. So that's happening, and those are the partners there, Acciona, Enagás, Cemex, and IDAI. IDAI actually happens to be the energy agency in Spain, and they're actually a shareholder in that company. And I already mentioned the creation of a regional roadmap to exploit the results of the project beyond the duration, beyond 2025. So this is something we really are paying a lot of attention to. Very complicated, lots of different aspects that you have to take into account, renewable energy sources and so on and so forth, final demand. You can imagine it's complicated, but this is something we are very keen to do, and will take a lot of effort in doing. With respect to synergies, Antonio already mentioned in the beginning, there's lots of talks about different projects, different platforms, initiatives, mission innovation. I don't have enough time to go through all of them, but just to let you know that we're very much keeping track of all of them as much as we can. Some of them are actually members of the project, believe it or not, or manage some of these platforms and initiatives, so we're very much in close contact, and we really believe in creating a community where we can actually share the lessons learned and so on. One other thing that I really need to mention is that we have received national co-funding for the buses in the city of Palma for the 5 buses, and in fact, that's the good news. The bad news is that funding is incompatible with the European funding that we're receiving from the JU. But the good news, based on that, is that most likely they're going to expand the fleet a little bit further and purchase another 3 18-meter articulated buses. So more to come on that. Some risks, challenges, lessons learned. Again, I was asked by Antonio to cover this. Permitting and regulations are a pain in the neck. You have to go town by town and explain to the local guy what it means to have a hydrogen piece of equipment in their backyard. They don't know. And it takes a while to convince them that it's probably okay. So that's something for you to think about. Even if there are European regulations, at the end of the day, somebody next door to your home has to actually say, yeah, this is okay, and sign off on a piece of paper saying that they don't take any responsibility And that's not something they like to do very often. On awareness, it's very difficult to engage with the public. Most people don't really know what hydrogen is about. Now it's becoming more of commonplace in the media and so on. But even so, there's still a long ways to go there. And last but not least, please do take pains to design your system from A to Z accordingly. If it takes you longer and if you have to pay more for the engineering and more for the knowledge that goes behind these things, please do. It'll pay off, trust me on this. You'll have a more reliable system to count on, and there's an excellent chance that it will actually last longer, work better, and everybody will actually be happier for it. We have a consortium of 30 partners. Again, don't go through all of them. They're doing a terrific job covering not only on the deployment side, but also on the replication studies, dissemination, and so on and so forth. And absolutely, this would not be happening without all of their contributions. And I will stop here. I hope I haven't exceeded the 10 minutes too much. I'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. You did great, and I'm pretty sure that a lot of the questions have been answered through your thorough presentation. Thanks a lot for condensing that. I would like to take one immediate question in the audience, of course, taking advantage that you are here. So, any questions in the audience that you would like to make now? I will take one. Gentleman there.
Thank you very much. Just a very quick question. As far as I know, this Hyland, Green Hyland project is not only one island, right, within Europe, and also, as far as I heard, at the beginning at least, there was Madeira was also part of it, but now so is it true, or it's clearly focusing only the project what you just explained us?
Okay. Two aspects. So the deployment of all the bits and pieces that I described will take place on the island itself, and that's where it's framed at. That said, we do have within the project consortium a number of partners who are representing other islands for the purposes of learning what we're doing and replicating whatever we do. So yes, the deployment is just the island, but no, we want to make sure that the replicability and the impact goes well beyond the island of Mallorca itself and can be actually exported. And that's one of the reasons why we have some island members in the consortium that don't belong to Baleares. They're actually from all over the world. We even have people from Chile as far as that. So I don't know, hope that answers your question.
Thank you for that. I mean, indeed, one of the elements when we launch call for Vales, it's this element of replicability. So we pay or we support investment in one location, but we are asking as well for activities that will lead to replication of these activities, ideally initiating Vales elsewhere, but this is an important part of all the Vales projects that we support, so including Green Hyland, as Carlos said. Thank you again, and now I will give the floor to Geerte Jong. She has been working with local governments and organizations on large projects on renewable energy, onshore, offshore energy, and she also has been working on European projects, including the Heavenn project, because Geerte is the program manager for Heavenn since August 22. This is a project supported under the Call 19, as I told you, and we are very curious to hear the progress of Heavenn. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Antonio. Can I please have the...
I will give you this. Thank you.
What makes it go to the next slide? All right. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and for whoever is standing and wants to sit. There are some seats here left in the front row. So nice to have all of you here. I will take you through our project Heavenn to give you a little bit of insight into what we do, and also the progress update to know where we are going, because Heavenn is one of the, I think, earliest, biggest hydrogen valleys in Europe. So it's a very special project, I think, and very nice to hear how far we have come. So the call year was 2019. Our total project budget is 96 million euros, and the Clean Hydrogen Partnership contribution was 20 million euros. On your right, you see the partners. We have 31 partners within our project, so that's quite a lot. You will see some very familiar names probably. Shell is a partner, Total Energies is a partner, some international partners as well. We have six different countries participating, but we also have very local municipalities, very small companies, taxi company joining us as the partners, so there is a big difference between the size of the partners within Heavenn. Here you see an overview of our financial situation. So we got quite a large contribution from the Clean Hydrogen Partnership, and also the local governments have also given subsidies for Heavenn. We're still waiting on the national subsidy as well, so we have not fully closed our financial situation. And also partners are of course contributing either financially or in hours worked or in equipment. The main objectives for Heavenn are to establish a working hydrogen ecosystem within a certain region, so in the northern Netherlands, and to see if we can make a working infrastructure where hydrogen is produced, is transported, and is also used by different kinds of end users. So we have mobility, we have built environment, and we have industry as well taking off hydrogen. It's all green hydrogen production, and in total 11 different fuel cell hydrogen applications from 4 different sectors. Here you see an overview of the project. It looks quite complicated maybe right now, but I will walk you through it. We work with 4 different clusters who are all doing the groundwork, so they are building things, they are buying things, they are investing in equipment, and then we have 3 different work packages that are working on research, replication, and basically to see how we can bring this concept further. Our first cluster is centered around the chemical park in Delfzijl, which is all the way in the northern Netherlands, and it's a port as well, so that's a very big industry cluster. There are partners working on a hydrogen pipeline, on building a salt barge that is being powered by hydrogen, and that's transporting salt to the port of Rotterdam, where it will also be powered by hydrogen and to sail back. There will be a way to fuel the ship as well, which is currently shown as an HRS, but we'll probably find another way to power the ship for now. And they will work on the electrical infrastructure. Almost all of these projects are well underway, with exception for the ship, because they had to look into a different system to fuel the ship, so they are reconsidering how to do that, but it might not be a hydrogen refueling station for now. In cluster 2, we are focusing on hydrogen storage and also on the built environment. We have pilots being done with the salt cavern storage to see if we can store hydrogen underground, and that's actually one of the projects that's advancing very quickly. They have done tests and they have done their research, and they are now working on bringing it further and scaling it up. We have a project centered around buildings in Hogeveen, where they are heating a housing project on hydrogen and finding different ways to do that, but also to see how we can convince people to have their house fully heated by hydrogen. If people are willing to participate, and in the pictures you can see a tiny house that they built where people can go in and see how their house would change if it was heated on hydrogen. So that's a very interesting project. And it's also going very well. It has had some trouble with permitting mostly, but otherwise they are doing well. We have a data center that is using hydrogen as a power source. And we have a project in Groningen where a municipal building would also be heated on hydrogen, and unfortunately they found out that it was for that particular building not effective to heat on hydrogen, and they would prefer to heat it electrically. So they aborted that project, and we are looking for a different project to take over the remaining hours. And cluster 3 is very much focused around the area of Emmen, which is also an industrial park. Here we are building a hydrogen pipeline, an electrolyzer, an HRS, and also using hydrogen admixed in natural gas for steam generation. The hydrogen pipeline is it still says planning phase, but I think most of it is already actually put into the ground but not yet connected. The electrolyzer is still underway in a very early stage. The HRS is already operational, so if you drive a bus and you are near Emmen, feel free to come fuel with us. And steam generation is also doing very well. They are planning and testing, and they're currently up to being able to admix 20% of hydrogen within their existing gas network, and they're going up to 100% by 2025. Cluster 4 is focused around mobility, where quite a lot of partners are buying all sorts of mobility applications, cars, heavy-duty vehicles, vans, buses, waste trucks, and also where 4 HRSs are built. And this is a cluster that has had a lot of problems with mostly having trouble procuring cars, because apparently parts or cars or expert personnel is very hard to find at this moment. So they are all underway, all finding out how they can purchase the right equipment. To give you an example, the municipality of Groningen wanted to have a salt vehicle, so a vehicle that would salt the streets in winter, run on hydrogen, and it turned out that the salt is damaging the hydrogen system, so they had to research what they could buy, what kind of equipment they would need to run on hydrogen. So it's very much pioneering for this cluster as well, which is explaining why they are seemingly off to a slow start, but actually a lot of work has been done. So we have the work packages 4, 5, and 6, which are very much about collecting data, structuring data, and also guarantees of origin. That's in work package 4. They had some delays, of course, because the clusters have had some delays, and this work package is really dependent on the results from the clusters. We have work package 5, which is very much looking at impact analysis and also the business models of the different projects within Heavenn, and that is quite well underway. That's also looking into how can we replicate, how can we scale up, how can we connect different values to each other. And then we have work package 6, which is looking at enabling future hydrogen rollout, also a roadmap up to the year 2050, and also a study into going towards a giga-scale hydrogen plant, which is already submitted, so that study is available for public reading. So some challenges that we run into with this project is, of course, due to COVID, we just had a lot of trouble. Sometimes people could not even work in the same environment due to restrictions. We had some technical restrictions. We had a lot of problems with permitting because for some governments it's just very exciting what we're doing with hydrogen, and they feel that they really need to research it very thoroughly, which of course causes some delays. We had a lack of personnel and a scarcity of materials, which was mostly felt in the mobility cluster. Also, as I mentioned before, we're still lacking of co-funding. And just this morning we were in a session where they said hydrogen economy is like synchronized swimming. So we all need to jump into the pool together. You cannot just have one person jump and the rest wait it out. So this is basically a case where everyone is still a little bit waiting it out, seeing if they, no one wants to be the first, and some have to wait for another partner to do something, and that other partner is waiting for funding, and now they're, so we're kind of gathering the momentum to all jump in the pool, and I think they will jump next year, but the big jumping has not been done yet. However, in work package 7, where the communication activities are, there has been quite a lot of work. Rightly so, I think Heavenn project is a very big example within Europe, and we have had a lot of international interest. Also, for example, the national news has interviewed some of our partners. Various delegacies have visited us. We have seen many conferences. So I think the Heavenn project has been in the news a lot, and hopefully is also known by many people, and hopefully also as maybe an inspiration or an example for other projects to also start up all over Europe. And that was it for me, Antonio.
Thank you so much. Thank you to you.
Thank you, Geerte, because I think it was yesterday during the wars. I think Patrick was taking the award for the Valley of the Year. He referred to Heavenn as a program, and indeed, I mean, we can see the complexity. Yeah. So the progress, and I think indeed it has done a lot of communication, and I think it has really helped others as well to think about the concept and to move it forward. So good to see the progress, and hopefully next year we can see something more. So
even more progress.
Even more. Thank you so much for that. So we have time for some question for the audience. An immediate question anyone would like to take or to make? Yes, please. Yes, Jesus. Yeah.
So far, there has been surprisingly little resistance to it, because you would expect that people are very nervous, of course, if you're putting a lot of hydrogen in underground storage. And it might be because it's still very early stage. And it might also be because people in the northern Netherlands are used to having natural gas in their like underground areas, so they're already nervous about that. I have not seen it, but I am expecting it, but so far none. So that's very surprising. But at some point, for sure, there will be resistance, yes.
I mean that you do very well.
Yeah.
Thank you. Then if there are no... Yeah. And the last question, please. Thank you.
I just wanted to flag that there's a question in Slido as well, Antonio, if you have access.
There is questions in Slido, yeah. Yeah, I know. Thank you.
Just asking back, you said you were expected to have some opponents or rejection or any kind of activity against it. May I ask why?
I would say in any project about renewable energy, I have never not seen any resistance. So that's probably why, but also because we know that there is still some nervousness by some people about hydrogen. And so far it has been very quiet. I think on this project we've heard mostly just very positive feedback. But I was referring specifically to the underground storage of hydrogen. Of course that might be for some people, well, be something that they are not very familiar with, and that might make them nervous, especially if they're living near the area. So yeah, I am expecting it. It is this project is handled by a company that is large enough, and I would say resistant enough to deal with it, hopefully in a very positive and engaging way. I'm glad that I don't have to deal with it personally, but I am expecting that some people would probably protest against it. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm afraid I'm going to take a question from the slide as well. 1 second only. It was a very specific question on Heavenn, the second one. We will take the other one for the panel debate. It's about the electrolyzer capacity and what will happen if the electrolyzer projects don't go ahead. Where will the hydrogen come from?
Yes. So basically the electrolyzer, I think the one that's talked about is the one in Heavenn. And it was planned for 2 megawatts, and they are looking into scaling up to 4 megawatts. But they're also looking into see if it should be a research and development kind of project. So it's very much still being researched what shape that electrolyzer would take. And one of the questions was also what's the alternative? That would be, I think, a research and development kind of project, or, well, very worst case scenario would be probably trucking in the hydrogen. But that's not talked about yet as an official alternative. So it's at this point the plan is just to build the electrolyzer.
Yeah, and if I may as well, there are other things. I mean, Heavenn is very big. We are supporting it with 20 million euros, and the project is around 96, and there are other things happening. So not supported within this project, but important and essential for the project is hydrogen production with electrolyzer capacity beyond. One, it's a 20 megawatt capacity plant electrolyzer that is supported by one of our projects, actually, the GWOS project. But I understand there is also the Jewels 2, which is looking at the 40 plus electrolyzer capacity, and those things are working in parallel. What we do in Heavenn, we are enabling that to happen. There is an upgrade of the electrical infrastructure, if I'm correct, in one industrial park to enable that electricity that is going to be generated through an outside intervention for renewable energy into the Heavenn to produce that. So we are decoupling, and you can see already the complexity of the projects because we have to look at the valley as a whole. We are supporting a fraction, but you have all these external elements looking at the, in this case, the production. Okay. Leaving aside, I understand the Hydrogen Netherlands initiative, which is looking at even the gigawatt scale as next step. So it's all happening in parallel as well.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Antonio.
Thank you. Last quick question, and I will have to move on for the next slides.
Shall I go first?
Please.
For our project, it's actually something that we do run into because the project was written in 2019, and since then the world did change quite a lot, especially for Europe and for the energy market. We are trying to stay as close as possible to the original plan as long as that's feasible, and I think for many things it is. But we do run into some problems. For example, some companies that thought that maybe they could run very financially beneficially on hydrogen, and now it turns out that it's a much bigger investment, and then they feel less need to participate in the project. But when it comes to, for example, purchasing vehicles or building an HRS, that's those items, they still have to be done. So we try to stick as much as possible to the original cluster and work package structure. But we have been changing some things. If I have to put it into percentage, it's really hard to say because some of it are very small details. No very big structural things have been changed, but we do sometimes change things, and then we do it through making amendments to the European Commission, of course. So it is a process, and that's why we try to stick to the plan as long as it's possible. But for example, for the electrolyzer, that's why they are looking at how can we do it, because they want to make the business case work as well. So it's possible that going forward and finding out more about how the energy market will maybe regulate itself, or how it will financially work out, that we might make some bigger changes as well to the project, but currently that's not known yet.
Carlos, if you want to add.
Well, from our side, I would say I would pretty much echo what Geerte said. We try to stick to the original plan as much as possible. There are some minor changes. To date, these have been very minor. Perhaps in our case, we are a smaller valley, if I can put it that way, versus Heavenn, of course, which makes it a little bit easier for our company's boards to say, yeah, we'll take the final investment decision and invest some millions of euros, even though the economics of the projects are not particularly attractive, let's say. We knew this. I think at least from the companies that were primarily involved in the part on hydrogen production. We knew this, and we were fully aware that it was going to be difficult to make a business case out of it. But there were some, I say, contingencies put in place to make sure that this would be minimized. So far, in terms of the final uses, we've seen that all the partners are on board. There haven't been any major changes. There's one partner which may change a little bit the scope, but by and large, that's stayed. Have we been lucky? I don't know. I'd like to think that we've done a good job, and I think the commitment from the partners was there from the beginning. So that's, it's a lot of work put in from the coordinating side, but also from the partners. They have to be committed, and clearly internally, their internal situation might change because you have changes in the political situation, the chairman leaves and somebody else comes along, they don't see it with the same set of eyes. All that stuff happens. But we've been committed to doing it in this way, sticking to the grant agreement as much as possible. And one thing I would say is communication is key. You have to communicate. If the partners have a problem internally, they need to communicate it to the coordinator, and we need to keep an open line of communication with the program office to make sure that any changes then are seen, justified, and then put into place. If you need an amendment, then you do an amendment. But so far, we foresee sticking to the plan by and large, I'd say to a large degree.
Thank you. So just a quick comment. So this agility and fail-safe approach, maybe we should think, from the partnership standpoint, how to build it in, because I think it will continue.
I mean, don't forget, we are a research and development program. Even research projects have problems, and you need to be agile. I think we have, of course, we are bounded to the grant agreement conditions, to the guidelines of Horizon Europe, but we have instruments to make things agile, of course, with effort, but we can, and we recognize, especially for these projects, because eventually we are supporting to the risk, these initial steps, that things may need to change, absolutely. So we try to do our best to recognize that and not to be static at all, yeah. But thanks so much for the question, and now I'm going to move to a bit of a different perspective. We've heard now from two of our projects. I'm very happy actually today that Alexander Gehling could come. He's working for NOW. Alexander has a Bachelor of International Management and Master in Comparative Public Governance, and since 2021 he coordinates the Hyland Regions Initiative, which is also trying at the German level to promote, deploy hydrogen valleys, and he's there the program manager following hydrogen valleys, so we are really looking forward to hear what is happening in Germany. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Antonio, for the introduction and also for the invitation to speak here today. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to present to you what the hydrogen regions in Germany are doing, and I will do this with the examples of three categories in which we fund hydrogen regions. I will show you in an overview how wide scale this program actually is, or this competition that we have has become. We have a total of 51 regions that we currently fund. Before you start adding up, you'll find it's not 51 in fact, but we have different categories depending on the experience and the knowledge level of the regions. So high starter, high expert, and high performer category, and regions do rise up through the categories, and then they can apply to the next one. And so a total of 51 regions currently funded. You see also from the application side here, the interest in this funding is enormous, it's huge. We have close to or just above 300 applications over the two phases which we've conducted in this funding program. We started doing it in 2019 with the first phase of Hyland, and in 2021 we started the second phase of Hyland. For the high starter and the high expert categories, we've already conducted these, found 30 new regions in total, and now we're currently looking for new high performers as well. Hydrogen is a part, or Hyland is a part of the so-called NIP, the National Innovation Program for Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Technologies. This is a funding program by the Ministry of Transport. We've, in the second phase, which is since 2016, the ministry has invested a total of 750 million euros, just above, into fuel cell and hydrogen technologies. And we see the different funding guidelines. The red part is the R&D guideline, and the yellow part is the market activation. So this is where we bring vehicles and technologies onto the street and into the regions. The black part is Hyland. This is what we invested in Hyland so far, 75 million euros currently. And soon you will see in the presentation that this is going to become quite a bit more. So yeah, let's go into the regions, and I explain to you using examples what these different categories stand for. So the first category of high starter, we have here the region of Rügenstrahl-Sund, which is in the very northeast part of Germany. They have a very big shipping industry, so in the shipping industry there has been some experience with hydrogen, but this has not expanded into the broader region. So along the value chain of hydrogen there was not much knowledge and experience present. So what we do is we work together with a consortium of experts. These are consulting companies that we hire and coordinate. and we bring them into the region and conduct a series of strategy dialogues together with the actors in the location. There's usually around 10 actors, which are an integral part of this process, but the network spans much wider than this. In the strategy dialogues, the regions get knowledge about the technology, what are the potentials, what are the application cases, and what can happen along the value chain. And then over the series of 8 strategy dialogues, they develop a vision of how hydrogen will be implemented in their region. This takes the form then of a local roadmap, usually looking at the years 2030, and sometimes they have very concrete plans that come out of this, as we can see in the example of Rügenstralsund here. The second category then is the so-called high expert category. This is a very good example of how this category functions. This is the region of Wunsiedel in Bavaria, northeastern Bavaria. Here, local utility company, together with a gas trader, together with Siemens, have constructed an 8.5 megawatt electrolyzer. This is actually currently already running. They just started production of hydrogen last year. And they've also realized now that there's an enormous interest in obtaining their green hydrogen all over the wider region. What we have done with High Expert is we've solved, or they have solved the question of what to do with the hydrogen once they have it, where to go with it, and this with a focus on the mobility sector. So as part of High Expert, they identified a large group of potential off-takers. They've identified locations for hydrogen refueling stations. They've analyzed these locations, so they're sure that they can implement the technology there. Together with the off-takers, of course, looking at what are the routes that the cars and the trucks drive, or the buses, to not plan past the off-takers. In the end of the process, it's a one-year process, which we support with 300,000 euros in the first phase. Now in the second phase, it's even 400,000 euros, because there's a bunch of communication activities as well connected. There's a lot of events that they conduct in the regions with the local actors. And with this money, they have conducted all these studies. And at the end of this, they've conducted this main study. And at the end of this process now, actually 50 actors have committed their interest in the form of an interest community, and are planning to move ahead with a total investment of 40 million euros until 2025. The third category, which is the implementing one, so these are regions where we go and there's a lot of projects already that have very concrete plans on what to do and how to do it, and we supported them in the first phase with 20 million euros of public funding to buy technologies according to the funding guideline of market activation. So in this region, which is the southwest of Germany, it's the cities of Mannheim, Heidelberg, and the districts surrounding this. We have seen investments in total of up to actually over 90 million euros that are spurred by this public funding of 20 million and an additional 16 million euros which the state of Baden-Württemberg has contributed. But to make it a bit easier, just with our funding that we've given into this region, there is a 2 megawatt electrolyzer being built for local bus operators and cars, which will produce 250 tons of green hydrogen annually. There's a high-capacity refilling center, which we also see on the picture there, the groundbreaking ceremony in June, built by Air Liquide. They will distribute there with a capacity of up to 9 tons of hydrogen per day, 3 tons of which will be applied directly in the mobility sector. Additionally to this, of course, you need the trailers, compressed gas trailers, 12 in total, and 5 hydrogen refueling stations which are being built in the region. On the application side, there's a large interest in cars and light-duty vehicles. They actually developed 2 light-duty vehicles for the public administration there, or for the road works organization of the public authorities. There's an additional 52 18 meters buses, and also additional 12-meter buses. And the 18-meter buses, there was an order that's been placed with EvoBus to supply the first 40 of those to Heidelberg, or to the so-called RNV, the local bus operator there in the region, with the option of buying an additional 35 of those buses until 2025. So this is moving ahead very nicely. We see the groundbreaking ceremonies on the left. The orders for the vehicles, as I said, have mostly been placed. I've mentioned initially, we are going into the second phase for the high performer category as well. So we will spend an additional 45 million euros in the next couple of years to fund new high performer regions. We're looking for projects, as I mentioned, that have concrete plans along the value chain of hydrogen, so production, transportation, and applications. What we have also in Germany is we have two large-scale funding guidelines for buses and for trucks. And we've advised the regions and the actors in the regions to use these funding guidelines because the conditions, as they've been notified by the EU Commission last year, are actually more attractive than those that we can offer in our funding guidelines. So high performer can then nicely build the ecosystem around these vehicles and these applications. The deadline for the submission of proposals here is the 31st of January, and we see a pretty large interest in this already. Additionally to this, and this is something that I work on quite a lot, is the networking aspect. So we have a very active network of these regions, 51 regions as I mentioned, with large actor networks behind each region. So we bring them together. Earlier you saw a picture already of our high-level event which took place for the first time last May, the Hyland Symposia, where the Minister of Transport, Dr. Volker Wissing, welcomed the regions of the second phase into the network and also announced the second phase of the high performer. We have a bunch of networking events that we do, workshops that we do. We also have an online presence. Currently, this requires you to speak German, but we are currently translating it into English, or we will start, and then you can have a look and learn more about these regions soon. What is very important to us, and I think in general in the hydrogen world, but also for hydrogen valleys, is the cooperation on an international level. The NOW has a long-standing cooperation with the Clean Hydrogen Partnership, formerly FCHJU, in looking for synergies between our funding programs, trying to work together along the different governance levels. We also support the work of the Clean Hydrogen Partnership in updating the Valley platform. What is also important is this cross-regional character that is currently also being looked for in the call for large-scale valleys. I think this has to be intensified in the future, not only at the level of implementation, but potentially also at the level of preparation, of planning. Some regions are, of course, doing this at their own initiative, using such funding as we see the IPSAI project, Clean Hydrogen Coastline down here in the north east of Germany, and then working together with the Netherlands and the Heavenn consortia, amongst others. And also Interreg has been used to promote this idea, but I think this is something that has to intensify, because then together I think we can bring hydrogen valleys forward into this next phase. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for bringing that aspect, because it's true, we work together, we collaborate, we talk, and indeed, we need to keep working on this direction, intensifying, but I think it's very good that we are able to do that. So I will call for an immediate question from the audience, if anyone has any questions. No? Yeah, please, gentlemen.
Thank you very much for the great presentation. Took a lot of pictures. I hope the slides will be available. Quick question, do you think that this model is replicable in other countries in the world? And I'm especially thinking about the countries where the German diplomacy is very active with GIZ and other players, for example, in Africa or in the Middle East. Do you think it's replicable as such, or not really?
Yeah, very, very good point. Very interesting that you bring this up. There is actually a funding program in Germany, which we are also working on by the Ministry of the Environment, which is called the Export Initiative. So here we are supporting countries directly, trying to aid them by giving them this experience that we have from our setups, and trying to initiate the same kind of activities in their countries. However, this does not have the same backing in terms of financial volume as we have in our funding program. But of course, I think if the opportunity is there, then this is also a path that could be taken by other countries. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Then I suggest we move on. Thank you so much, Alexander. And as I mentioned before, we do not only support projects, we support another range of activities aiming to stimulate and to promote the deployment of valleys. and Pedro Guedes, which is my colleague here at the Joint Undertaking. He has a bachelor in economy, master in energy and environment, and he's taking roles as financial engineering in different organizations. And actually today he's the financial engineering officer of the Joint Undertaking. So he's going to present you a few of our activities looking at those aspects.
Thank you very much, Antonio, and thank you very much for being here today. Yeah, I will run you through a little bit what we've been doing since 2016 regarding the regions and how we raised awareness and how we end up with programs like NOW. I tend to feel that we somehow have contributed to building such a nice program, which nowadays actually dwarfs a little bit the initiative of the Commission, because you have huge firepower. So congratulations for that. First of all, let's look a little bit into the, and hopefully this, okay, it's working, into what we have been doing. Since 2016, we have been working with the regions on a different approach. So technology was getting close to the market in terms of research and innovation. We're pushing the TRL ladder very fast in terms of product development, and we wanted to check exactly what was going on and what was the appetite in the market. And we realized that the top-down approach that we were having was not really delivering it, so we tried a bottom-up approach, reaching out to regions to really make the case and raise the awareness for creating business cases at the local level. Why? Because they're close to the people, and mostly the arguments are always on the back of exactly what people want, and that's actually the reason why we have Heavenn. It's because at some point people complain about natural gas related earthquakes happening down there. So population is very important. Then we started playing with hydrogen valleys. We had several rounds of hydrogen valleys. The last one was this year. And just to give you some figures, all in all we have about 70 million euro spent on hydrogen valleys, whilst when we look at NOW, already 75 spent, which is impressive, I must say. The homework was there. It's very good to see Heavenn and Green Hyland here today, because you see that they are really implementing, and even if there are barriers, even if there are hurdles, they are achieving what they were supposed to achieve, and they are really taking care of the offtake. But we also understand that there's a need for supporting more regions into this type of activities related with the clean energy transition and bringing hydrogen as an energy vector to it. So we really see the hydrogen valleys as a concept that's really good to explore the renewables and the offtake in a single ecosystem. And this is the case. We see it happening elsewhere, so it's very good to confirm that. Because of this, we launched the Project Development Assistance, a little bit like your first step in NOW, to really help regions to move one step further in their ideas, in their concepts, and try to land projects. We did it. We are doing it for the second time now. It's happening, and I'll get to that later on. But we are also working with the mission innovation. This is the topic these three are the topics that I'm supposed to speak about today. But as was clearly mentioned by Alexander, but also by Antonio, synergies are critical. So we really see that due to let's say the limited budget or the firepower of Horizon Europe, and at least the budget that we have that has been allocated to us, we need to create synergies in order to leverage as much as possible in this infant market that we're still on, to really boost the uptake. So, and funding is very important, and synergies, and that's why we launched this year, piloted the Seal of Excellence, to make sure that member states can chip in at some point when our budget is not sufficient. So that was one step. But then we also see the Commission pushing ahead and really taking us there's this policy feedback loop that we have with the Commission, which if you look at the right side of this, right-hand side of this slide, you'll see all the policy that is being increasing the ambition every time. I mean, every 3 months we have a new target coming in, and REPowerEU just came in, of course, for the bad reasons of the invasion of Ukraine, but still, again, another push on renewable hydrogen, and therefore coming with an extra budget for ourselves, which is not neglectable. It's 20% more of what we had before, 200 million euros that we will spend in 3 years' time to really double the valleys in Europe, and this puts us in a very good position to steer again all member states into the same direction. So a lot of support, a lot of feedback to the European Union, but also to member states, and making sure that we have a resilient and sustainable energy transition. We do this with a very targeted action. We need to have high impact on the public money that we have, and that's why we have developed this program since 2016. We were pointed after consulting and working with roughly 1/4 regions that represent 1/4 of the population and the GDP in Europe. Back then in 2016 and 2017 and 2018 we worked with them, and we realized that we should go 3 ways. One is project development assistance to help regions that have not yet had the chance to work with hydrogen, build their business cases. The other one is to keep the awareness raising and the networking. So we pushed and worked with the regions to develop this European Hydrogen Valley Partnership, very successful nowadays. It's also a pillar nowadays of Hydrogen Europe, which is a member of our governing board. And then we had the mandate to create hydrogen valleys. Hydrogen valleys, I will not go through this, but you already know, it's basically regionally, it has a regional focus. It aims to really have the whole value chain combined in a single project, ensuring that the offtake, here we push a little bit. We want renewable hydrogen, and we want 2 sectors or applications to be using the hydrogen in the end. Why? Because we want a hydrogen economy, not just to decarbonize a certain industry. This is very clear for us. And with all these fronts, we launch procurements to really make the case for this and push the sector further. Now, looking at the PDA itself, we found a hotspot for us, or actually a missing link in terms of project development, in between the project developments that existed already in the market, because fuel cells and hydrogen are complex technologies that are not mastered by most of the consultancies, and we thought to really fill in this gap. That's why we created the pilot PDA. Very successful. Because of this, we created the FCH Regions Hub. Everything is more or less gathered in that platform. But diving into the PDA itself, the first one, with a limited amount of money, we managed to help 11 regions in Europe to develop their business cases. But not only those 11 that received the project development assistance, but all of them, those that applied to the Observer, to the PDA, they were involved in the Observer network. So in the end, we pushed and raised the awareness and pushed knowledge regarding the technology to all these 24 regions that are highlighted in the map. But we also achieved not only a very nice geographic balance, but also a very nice spread in terms of technologies that we were looking at, a wide portfolio of technologies, which actually was very useful. When you look at, actually I thought I had a slide there, but I wanted to say that the leverage factor, if I can put it this way, the leverage factor in terms of the investment that can be triggered because of what we did is about 1,000. So €1 that we put there could deliver, it's could because we don't know if all these projects are going on, are progressing to in the future, but they could deliver €1,000 of investment. So that's a very large factor, leverage factor. Well, you have it there, what is the PDA, what is not. Basically, it's tailored to the needs of each specific region. They tell us what they exactly need to move forward, and we tailor the activities of the consultant to reach the needs of the sector. There's a lot of lessons learned. You can go through it. Actually, I had the slide here, and this is the investment that we are actually expecting to get roughly. Out of less than €1 million, we'll get close to €1 billion of investments if all these projects are successful. So this is meaningful, even if sometimes it's not the Hydrogen Valley concept, it's a business case that really moves forward. And this is, we saw the replicability earlier on with Heavenn and Green Hyland partnering somehow in both projects. We have other well, replication is really key for us. We see that this PDA is again another opportunity. And because we believe in that, we launched the PDA 2. And the PDA 2 is again focused not only on the EU 13 countries, as we call them, the 13 that arrived later to the European Union. So we go for the cohesion countries and the outermost regions and islands. Why do we focus on these? Because indeed there's a lot of knowledge in Central Western Europe, but other parts of Europe are not covered as well in terms of nor knowledge nor budget to go along to deploy a hydrogen economy. So this was the concept. The call, as it was announced today, the call finished. The call for expression of it finished last Friday. We got 23 applications, out of which probably I can already announce that that we cover 8 cohesion countries out of these. So it's almost ticking all the boxes that we wanted. And we have 2 EU or associated country islands on this as well. That was one thing that we wanted to tick. And we also have outermost regions covered here. So apparently, let's see, we will do the evaluations. It's a 2-stage evaluation process. We will move now to the second stage, but apparently we are delivering. Now, the second topic that I wanted to speak about, which was already hinted by Alexander, was the mission innovation. We are the length arm of the Commission to implement the mission innovation. The Commission is the co-lead of the Clean Hydrogen mission under mission innovation. It includes, if you're not aware, it includes the United States, Chile, India, China, Japan, and so on. Australia, so many countries, including Germany, but the Commission takes really a very important role in here, and we have been working with in developing this platform, especially. So the Commission is responsible for the second pillar out of 3, which is the Hydrogen Valley pillar, and for that we designed this platform, this Mission Innovation Hydrogen Valley platform. The ambition is for it to be the platform that really showcases the valleys around the world, but also that backs the strategy of the Mission Innovation, which is to reach 100 hydrogen valleys by 2030, out of which 3 from each of the members of the Mission Innovation. From our perspective, and with the Repower EU and so on, it will be the ambition for the Commission is to go to 50 by that timeline. That's one thing, and you already see that there's a lot of focus in Europe in there. I can tell you again that out of the 38 hydrogen valleys that we have in the platform today, 24 have already achieved the final investment decision or are beyond that, and 17 out of those are European. So just to say that, look, it's happening, and we're showcasing it already. And it happens in different ways. It happens in different archetypes. You see they're the lightest archetype, which is focused on mobility, the archetype 1. But you see also the second one that again goes one step above, it scales up and goes into industry. And then you have the very large archetype, which is focused on industry and could perhaps see export as a way to move forward. Some figures there I will, because it's too far away for me, I cannot really deep dive into that, but just to say that it's a question of building the market, and hydrogen valleys, because they de-risk themselves within their structure, because they take care of the chicken and egg dilemma by having the renewables, the production of hydrogen, and the consumption of hydrogen in a single geographic plus stakeholder group. Then it actually enables, it's an enabler to reach those amounts of green hydrogen that we want to have in the future. And archetypes evolve, so they start small, but they can increase. That's what we see nowadays. Just some key messages there. But what I wanted to say is that this second version of the platform, what we call the MI20, actually we want to further develop and enhance it in terms of networking with not only the project developers, not only the policymakers that are behind from the members of the Mission Innovation, but with all of them to build a market, a global market. So that's the main takeaway on that. We have just launched the survey for another round of valleys to come on board. There's a timeline there, so this is happening today, and we're really looking forward to reach out to as much hydrogen valleys as possible. If you go to the platform, you will see how to get in touch. Please do, if you have something, not just a PowerPoint, not just an idea, something that is really moving ahead, and you would like it to be showcased in the platform. And then main takeaways. I mean, I made a case for the need of hydrogen in terms of decarbonizing the hard-to-abate sectors. It's not just mobility, and for mobility we speak about long-haul heavy-duty transportation, most of it, but it's also about industry and the feedstock, hydrogen as a feedstock, but also as a high-heat grade fuel. We also see the hydrogen valleys as to reveal the true potential of hydrogen as a clean energy carrier, an energy vector, to increase the cheap and intermittent renewables penetration. That's key. What we call the sectoral integration. That's a key message. Until 2030, we really want to boost the market uptake, and this comes with some de-risking tools. Our budget is limited. We work in synergies with member states, in synergies with NOW as well, to make sure that we leverage as much as possible this and make it happen sooner. But hydrogen validity is really a good concept to de-risk such type of projects. And then, just to conclude, that it's economically attractive at all levels, at cities, at regional, at countries, but even at regional block levels. And thank you very much.
Thank you a lot, Pedro. I suggest, for the sake of time, because I can see also some questions coming in Slido, some of them are answered throughout the presentation, so I won't address them. But I would like to move to the next part of this panel, because otherwise we will run out of time. And I would like for this to introduce to Nigel Holmes. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Antonio. Good afternoon, everybody. And I'm unfortunately not with you. It would have been great to be in Brussels, but that didn't happen. I'll just give you Antonio, do you want me to give you a few comments based on what's been said?
Yeah, I would just like to introduce you first, just in case. I'm pretty sure a lot of the people in the room know you, but Nigel, with others, I mean, back even I think the Hydrogen Valley concept existed, started to already work on developing hydrogen ecosystems. That was done, part of his activities within our Big Hit project. That goes back to 2015 call and 16, the activities started. So that's why an element of the research, hydrogen research day that we have in this year is to really not only look forward on what it is that we could do. Let's don't forget, we have just been top up with 200 million for valleys, so we need and we will have additional activities, but it's important to look back as well, no? to try to see and build on those lessons. So we have these contributions from external scientifics, external experts to actually guide us through that, and this is a bit also the objective of this second part of the discussions today. So yes, Nigel, if you would like to spend a few minutes on your immediate reaction, then I have a number of questions and things I would like to ask you.
Thank you. So I think there are some very clear themes, consistent themes coming out from the presentations, which relate very closely to what we've seen from Big Hit. And I think top of the list is essentially we are all learning as we go along, learning by actually doing, by deploying. And I think the key thing that's been said many times is we need to find out how we can best share that learning, share it quickly and share it effectively. So this whole question of the networking, And this is something that I'll come back to about what's been going on with Big Hit in that area. And some of the lessons learned, I was quite taken by the comment from Geerte about Heavenn finding some of the problems with salt, with the systems, the hydrogen systems. And you can see from the picture behind me, the Orkney Islands are basically in the middle of not in the middle, but the top of the North Sea. It's very windy, it's very salty, and absolutely we've had similar experience with salt affecting the equipment that's being used. Now, this is not a trivial challenge because going forward, there's going to be an increasing amount of hydrogen production being deployed in the North Sea, possibly on platforms in the middle of the North Sea. And this experience in a salty marine environment is going to be critical if we're going to scale up successfully and actually deliver multi-gigawatts of hydrogen production. One of the other points that's come out several times, Carlos, you mentioned some of the questions around permitting of pipelines. We had similar questions around not permitting, but getting permissions for running things as simple as water pipes to the actual electrolyzer site. And again, these are what you might think of as being little problems, but actually can take a lot of time and a lot of consultation. We were lucky in Orkney. There was some early engagement done with the community. We had some very good feedback from the community. They were very enthusiastic about hydrogen. But even then, there are people you need to work with in order to get this forward. So planning is getting through planning. And one of the other things we found out the hard way are some of the contracts around the supply of the electricity made it very, very difficult for the electrolyzer to run when the turbine was not in surplus, when it was being curtailed by lack of capacity on the grid. So that is another key part. One that's actually fundamental to all of what we do is safety. And one of the things that again took time was that we were deploying the heating system in a school, and we had to be absolutely certain that the installation and the operation of that system would be very safe. So we actually went through additional processes of safety reviews just to make sure that was the case. And finally, communications. So as well as the networking and sharing ideas, communications in terms of public engagement has been very important. I noticed that Heavenn is using a schematic of the Heavenn deployment, very similar in many respects to the schematic we used for Big Hit in Orkney. And this visual approach to actually making communications understandable to the public, I think is very important. A Hydrogen Valley is a very complex system, and to find a way of expressing all of the parts and how they join together is not straightforward, but it's actually critical that people understand why a valley needs to be created. As you said earlier, like synchronized swimming, everybody needs to jump into the pool at once. Things need to happen at once if it's going to work properly. So, and coming back very finally to the sharing of lessons learned, the Big Hit project set up the Hydrogen Territories platform. This has been growing over the past couple of years. We actually had a webinar about 3 weeks ago. The very start of European Hydrogen Week was one of the side events. And I was delighted that for that webinar, we had people from 35 different countries taking part. So it's not just a question of what's going on in Scotland or in Europe. This is a really global question. And if we're going to make it work, we need to share it and share it widely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nigel. And I build on what you say about lessons learned. I mean, you were working on that before probably anyone considered the idea, but what can we do? And you mentioned the territory platform. Is this something that could be a vehicle to, because we heard yesterday, the regulations are an issue, the permitting is an issue. We heard it from Carlos, they've gone through this. Is there a way in which we can somehow build on what has been achieved, convey to others, make other hydrogen valleys more smooth if you want, or maybe that's something which you would argue it's too local, we cannot do it? Could be this platform a means, and what happens with the platform now that the project has ended?
So the plan is for the platform to continue. So the Aragon Hydrogen Foundation, who were coordinator of Big Hit, they're working with a number of the other projects, including Heavenn and Green Hyland. Heavenn and Green Hyland have actually taken part in many of the HTP events, the webinars, And I think absolutely that there is a way that that could be used going forward. One of the structures that we used in the webinars was consider the different stages of a project. So starting with the project concept, some of the work you need to do around the financing. So again, financing has been mentioned quite a number of times. It's critical. Then the commissioning stage of a project and the operational stage of a project. And this sequence going through a project, I think could be used widely as part of the structure for taking people through what you need to do and how you might do it, and taking not just big hits, Heavenn and Hyland, but other projects into account, because each project will have its own challenges. One of the things I would like to mention is that what we found in the project, and every project has this, something pops up, it's unexpected, and with the way the projects are structured, you don't have much in the way of contingency funding in the budget. And again, that makes it quite difficult. You've got to go out, you've got to see if you can find additional funding to actually get things to happen. So it's maybe just a side comment, is the way projects are run, there maybe needs to be a way of actually having contingency in these projects, because the unexpected will happen.
Thank you. As you mentioned, Heavenn and Green Hyland, I wanted to ask Geerte and Carlos about this continuation of activities, and having gone through a number of these issues, you were talking about the permitting, do you see that we could do something? I mean, you are doing something in your projects, but what type of coordinated approach could help others to go through this? Do you have the resources in the project to do that? And let's put it in another way, maybe more simple, because all projects have resources to develop this type of activity. So what could we do? No, because we hear for the last 2 days there are these issues. So how could we build on that now that we have real projects there?
Well, you're looking at me, I guess I'm going to go first. You're not looking at Kurt. I guess there are some things you can do, some things you cannot reasonably expect to achieve. So, for instance, in Spain, we have a certain set of procedures that apply for obtaining environmental permits, and you have to go through those. And that's national law. So you can try to change that national law by convincing the regulators that they need to actually change things, because otherwise you make a mess out of such projects, and to adapt them to the needs of the sector, let's say. So that's one aspect that could in principle be done with a coordinated approach. Honestly, project by project, that's very difficult to achieve. So we will disseminate, and we do have, for instance, the Spanish Hydrogen Association. We work with the Energy Agency, who's also providing funding for the solar plants. They know, but probably something else could be done at a higher level, commission level, program office, CHP, and so on and so forth. That said, ultimately, what ends up happening is that, well, silly but true example that I mentioned before, at the end of the day, when you go to a city hall and you have somebody sign off on an environmental permit, that's that guy who doesn't know anything about hydrogen. And you're asking him or her to put their signature on a piece of paper that says they take full responsibility for anything that might happen, when they haven't seen hydrogen. All they know that it's explosive and flammable. So the level of dissemination and level of awareness and documentation that you need to, these are all fields in which you need to advance. To get to that level of concreteness, I don't think you can do that at the project level. I don't think the Commission can do that. I don't think the Clean Hydrogen Partnership is equipped to do that. That just takes time. It's awareness. We can try to have more readily available information that helps these people, because when we go there and say, hey, please sign me this paper, and oh, by the way, for all the questions that you might have, go here, and there will be fully answered or 95% answered, and then you're off. That would help. Still, it's not easy to put that into practice. I do think that that's an issue that needs to be tackled in some way or another at both levels, like the national regulation level, which I think the Commission could potentially look at that and do something, and I know the Alliance is looking at it. But at the local level, every municipality has certain rights on how they treat property, what kind of permits they provide and issue, and that's a more difficult issue to tackle in my view. I don't know, Geerte would like to compliment.
Yes, we have exactly the same experiences, and what you really notice is that it's so new for everybody involved, basically, that you're just kind of trying to invent the wheel together. And especially we also run into problems with permitting where someone has to approve something and they have no idea what they are approving. Also, what we run into a lot is that the project was written down by people thinking really beautiful thoughts and having great ideas, and then they have to, then the funding is given and then they have to get to work, and it turns out that it's not possible in the way that they wrote it down. And the alternative solution is more expensive. And now they have their funding, and that's basically set in stone, and they almost have to make another FID to see if they can still participate in the project for the new cost. So I don't know how that can be solved, but the question that we get most from our partners is there any money left for us? And there is none, so that's a very disappointing answer. But if there was a way to be maybe more flexible with the budget, or to get some kind of like extra money for unforeseen circumstances, either within the project or the partners themselves, or any way to structure that, I think that would help partners be more flexible in how they will do their project that they signed up for. So that is our experience from Heavenn.
What about in Germany? What is your learnings, or what do you see in the program?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Since permitting is such a large topic here right now, I'm going to briefly touch upon that because, as Carlos rightly said, these are processes which the local administrators usually have never dealt with, unless maybe there's a chemical industry in their location, in which case they've maybe seen similar permitting processes take place. So this is a topic which, in some cases, makes the projects or impacts the timing of the projects, which we also see, and we see many regions now actually address this topic on a wider level, on a regional level, so on a state level. Maybe they talk to other regions, other hydrogen regions. But what we're also looking at right now is setting up a committee of the hydrogen regions at the national level to address topics like this one and see what we can get out of these experiences. So this is something that we are conceptualizing right now, see if it can be done, see how it can be done, and then we're hoping to really dive deeper on these topics and maybe produce some generalizable findings that will help these projects move ahead in the future.
Okay, that sounds like a good idea. That's a bit of a peer-to-peer exchange as well.
Absolutely.
No, that sounds okay. Thanks. I would like also now to look a bit forward, Nigel. Heavenn, large-scale valley, we've heard it before. Okay, we compare it to Green Hyland. One is 1,500 tons of size, looking at Heavenn. Mallorca Valley, it's smaller in its beginning with, of course, ambitious prospects, 300 tons. And now what we see in our calls, we do have this support, not to small-scale valleys and to large-scale valleys. The smallest scale is around 500 tons. Largest scale, I think, in the call 22 was 5,000 tons of hydrogen. So, given your experience, and I would after, of course, open the floor to other speakers, should we start small? Should we go bigger? I mean, what is your experience? How could we have most of the impact? Maybe by thinking we can go large from the beginning, we think that's the best use of the money. Or maybe we think, well, actually, it's easier to start small. I don't know. What is your experience, and what you would recommend looking ahead in the program as well?
I'm going to cover both options here, and I think we need both, but for different reasons. With the smaller projects, this is, I think, in many cases, learning to walk before we run, and that's important because there's a whole load of aspects around operation of electrolyzers on variable renewable energy, which we're starting to learn the hard way, especially when you have systems where the amount of electricity available drops beneath the threshold that you can actually run the electrolyzer at. So it very much becomes a question of the way the electrolyzers may respond very quickly, but when you're starting up an electrolyzer from cold, it takes quite a bit of time to actually run through not just producing the gas, but getting the gas to the quality that you need to actually take it forward to compression and storage to be safe. And as I say, a lot of this means that you need to think very carefully about how you integrate the electrolyzer with the variable renewables. Do you need a storage solution in between the two? What's the operational parameters? And this matters again, because if we start to look at deployment of electrolyzers offshore on platforms next to wind turbines, this directed coupling of the wind turbine with electrolyzer will be critical. And in many cases, we're now starting to see designs coming through where there is no electrical connection from the offshore turbine back to the shore. So there's just a hydrogen pipe in some of these concepts. The Dolphin project being a good example in point. So that if we can get that right, we then have a cookie cutter approach, cut and paste, get it to work. You can then replicate it very quickly. If you do lots of them and you get economies of scale, that helps you to scale up. The other approach, which is to go for bigger systems, so where you have land-based systems, and people are talking about gigawatt scale, it sounds brilliant, but we need to make sure that the lessons we learn from the small-scale projects are relevant for the big projects, and the big projects actually benefit as a result. So again, it's a staged process. I think we're on a journey, and it's going to take time to get all of the relevant parts in place, but we've got to move quickly as well.
Thank you. I don't know if, of course, we have this larger scale, smaller scale. What do you see the prospects, for instance, in the case of Mallorca, to grow? I mean, there is this element, of course, of having limited funding. There is an element of starting something small. Is this enough to grow? Do you think that by the end of the project there would be, I'm not sure if a business case per se that would be sustainable, but would we put the foundations something? And if not, what would you need? I know, additional funding, probably, but what else, if that wouldn't be the case? So what do you see happening ahead?
I know a lot of people talk about funding being one of the main roadblocks, and it is, but to me it's not the main roadblock. The main roadblock is finding people who want hydrogen. The hardest thing to find in the hydrogen sector that I've found over the last few years and the last couple of years in the private sector is finding people who want to use the hydrogen. And that user is the one that's going to then frame whether you want a small valley, a large valley, or something in between. Once you have a final user, that final user should be the one that you're catering for. They should not be molding themselves to what kind of hydrogen production you've got. It's the other way around. We are creating something for the final user. Let's make sure that the needs of the final user are met, and then we can scale up as much as you like. So one of the things we're doing in Mallorca is making sure that we put as much effort as possible to find final users. Part of that is we actually have a group of, basically a working group. We call it a sales working group that actually are doing what you might call outreach, literally, sales calls. And trying to find out who might want some hydrogen and to what degree. Now, in this particular case, yes, indeed, we already have a predefined amount of hydrogen, but hopefully by making sure that people know what the hydrogen project is doing, Green Hyland project is doing in their island, what the pros and the cons, what works, what doesn't work, the prices involved, and all the other aspects that come along with it, they will become comfortable with taking on some hydrogen for whatever uses. Whether these are just green certificates, whether these are basically a fuel cell, a car, a truck, what have you. And once you do that, you start disseminating and you start building up that critical mass of final users, and then you scale up. And then that you can do as a group with all these companies, with other partners that we have in the project, such as, for instance, the regional government, putting together a roadmap, disseminating, making sure everybody's familiar with it, raising the level of awareness, and so on and so forth. But I'm going to repeat myself, apologies for this. First and foremost, find the damn final users. Once you do, then everything else should follow, not the other way around. And that will determine whether you want a small valley, a medium valley, a big valley, or a gargantuan size valley, gigawatts or even beyond.
Yeah, if I can comment, that's one of the beauties of the Hydrogen Valley concept, because you push the private side to really look into the offtake of hydrogen. It's not just about producing, it's about making sure that it is delivered and it is useful. And therefore, it allows to really size properly the whole infrastructure, thinking on the end user first and foremost, and then scaling up when the demand is there to go along.
Thank you. Do you see any specific size on the, I think it's the high performer, no? The valleys that you are supporting? What it could be a representative valley there in terms of size and...
So we have not quantified that. We have some qualitative criteria that we will assess them by, but for sure the size has to be adequate to the users that are in the project. And as you said, Pedro, rightly, this is the nice thing about valleys, that you bring the producer and the user together. I just want to touch on what was said there earlier, because many of our regions are giving us the feedback that the interest in hydrogen has actually been enormous. So there's been a huge interest in using the gas to substitute, for example, natural gas. And the coordinators in the regions have been getting many calls from different companies, SMEs, local bakeries, whoever it is, calling them, asking them, when can I get hydrogen? But what it is about then is finding the users who are able to take off the hydrogen. And this is what they're looking in. I know in some of your projects. In our projects, it's always with the mobility, in the mobility sector. So there we have products which are available, and once they join a valley call, they already know what this technology requires them to do also in terms of infrastructure and then application. But I think what is important is finding the users who are actually also able to do it, and then of course able to pay the price as well in the initial phase.
Thank you. It seems to me that it goes in this direction of assisting others to create and build the projects before you even think as well on the next stage of funding the investment themselves, which could open the room, of course, with the technical assistance or the development assistance that we have supporting now. I was looking at the time, and it's almost 3:30, which is a pity, but I don't want to close before asking you one more thing, Nigel, and we've talked about your experience going back, what has worked, what has not worked, and ways, if you want, that we could build on this knowledge that has been acquired and shared with others. But you know our program, I mean, you are familiar with it. What other research and development, because eventually we are also a research and development program, what other research and development priorities could you see supported in the years ahead that could help on hydrogen valleys?
So I think some of the very good work that's been carried out by the Clean Hydrogen Partnership has been on some of the underpinning requirements, and I'm thinking in particular of the High Law project, which was carried out and started to actually look at all of the codes and standards and regulations across Europe for different market sectors. And just reflecting on the comments that were made earlier about this question of when you're starting to go and have discussions about permitting, when you're starting to have discussions about planning, is there a next step which needs to be carried out, which is actually looking at some of the practical aspects, how some of the experience might be shared across different countries that would help to actually progress these discussions. Maybe information that can be used with the local authorities, the planners, the environmental agencies, that actually gives them the understanding, helps to create the understanding to actually take that discussion from somebody who knows nothing about it, apart from, as you said, Carlos, it's flammable and there could be explosions, to one that says, yes, we understand that, we appreciate it's no worse than something that they've worked with already. And this could be an approach which would be help to facilitate and move these things forward, which otherwise could take a long time if people are less sure about them.
Okay. Thank you for that. And before I close, I just want to answer one or two questions that came from the Slido. I mean, there is a question that came at the very beginning, and I didn't want to address it before, and probably I want to address it now, because it's about how competitive hydrogen valleys are. And I think we've heard today that it's a very dependent situation, depending on what the off-taker is. So I think that's something that probably has to be looked at case by case. And then on how the hydrogen valleys fit in R&D programs. And I hope that also has been answered today, because we are not simply giving support investments and we forget about it. There is a coherent approach to that as well, about bringing the integration element, the innovative integration of all the things together. That's the innovation that comes into our valleys, and this is why we also think that there is a need in this program to support hydrogen valleys, hoping that, of course, national funding, regional funding, and own funding, which we also see in the project, let's don't forget about it. There are companies out there that with the support that they get, they are willing to also invest their own funding. So I'm going to have to close because I know we are very strict with the time, but I also know we have a coffee break and probably there is a lot of benefits from people asking questions to the panelists today. But if I would say, I would quote you now, Carlos, that you said funding is not the only thing, and I think it's a very good thing to hear, especially because we always hear funding is the main issue. And I think we, or at least myself, to take it home a little bit on how we could work on it, I take on the need to actually work and to support on that identification of the business cases through the off-takers. How could we do that at European level? Let's think about it, but I can see that there is a lot of work that could be done even before we go into thinking on providing full support for investments. There could be maybe other instruments in between the project development assistance that we do and the support to investments. And then, Nigel, what I hear also, I don't know, a high law for valleys or something like this. We do have a regulation codes and standard group somehow. We run this platform, so probably we need to think now, including on the safety aspects, which is something you mentioned. We have also a European safety panel, and I have my colleague running it in front of me, that I can see him nodding, that probably we need to think, what do we want to do for and with the valleys? We have a limited amount of projects now, this is right, but probably as the community of valleys come together, maybe we can think also on how to address those elements. And of course, and mission innovation, absolutely. And I had a question for you, Pedro, but you addressed it, which is this element of how much, how do you say, exchange capacity building will be, and I could pick from your presentation that that will be done in mission innovation too.
Indeed, absolutely. So that's one of the aims of mission innovation, to really help create, standardize, and look at safety issues from a worldwide perspective, and then boost the market by solving these together.
Thank you, and I'm sorry to having to close it, so it's the time we have, but Carlos, thank you so much for presentation and coming here. Pedro, Alexander, and Geerte, I had a lot of questions, a lot of things to ask or others, but I suggest that we close the session now. And Nigel, of course, yes, I forgot that you are on the left screen, so we have to then thank you so much for the effort. And I know it was, not possible for you to come, but I really appreciate that you took the time to think about it and to participate with us. And of course, we will be in touch very soon. Thank you so much for that. Thank you to all of you, and again, I encourage you to talk to the people. We have a coffee break until 4, and then we will have a session on heat and power, hydrogen clean heat and power. So